Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you guys are at. I hope you're having a fantastic day. It's SoulSaint here, and I wanted to talk to you guys about some of the upcoming events that are currently available in Raid as of right now. Now, I gotta say this, just if you've been watching my live streams, you've heard me give my criticism about, like, where's the Shadowkin? Where's the Shadowkin? Where's the Shadowkin Summon and Pull event? And I gotta say, touche. Touche, player. Touche. I wasn't expecting them to kind of skip it and then come back to it with the whole... what do they call it? Golden Week or whatever the case may be. I'm not entirely sure the entire ties. Maybe you guys can let me know in the comments below, but I believe it has some loose ties to Japanese culture. And Shadowkin is very, very reminiscent. If you look at a lot of the styles and approaches that some of the champions are designed off of, they have that aesthetic kind of going for them. So I thought it was very clever, very clever. And I also have to say, I'm very surprised with it. Now, with that being said, I did say that I was willing to go in on this event because I would like to finish off not only my faction guardians, but if I can get some pretty decent duplicates or maybe even the new Shadowkin Unity champion as well, that'd be really cool. You know, that's what I'm hoping for. So I'm going to explain to you guys what's going on. Basically, we have a Shadowkin specific not fusion, excuse me, but a Unity headliner in Tetssuya, I think is how you say his name. Tetssuya, yeah. And we have a couple of legendaries you can also get, as well as epics that are all Shadowkin oriented. So this is entirely faction guardian or faction based champions that you can get for the Shadowkin. So why do I care about this, and why should you care about this, or why could you care about this? Well, for one, if you're looking for specific champions to help you out in various different ways to progress, whether that's your Kanagashi, who's like one of the only rezzers inside the Shadowkin faction, or if you're looking for like some alternative options like Burengiri, or maybe even a Taragi, or some of the other miscellaneous champions you can get, it's a great way to specifically target them. Now, with that being said, it's very important to keep in mind that you have a 6% chance to get a legendary, with the rest being 94% chance towards epics. So not bad in terms of like options for what you would get. There is a mercy system built up to start acquiring other champions, which hopefully we won't need to rely on. But for the most part, the main thing is access to specific champions. So this game has a lot of champions, whether it's legendaries, epics, rares, commons, uncommons, you know, the whole 9 yards. So being able to target and specifically focus towards a faction in particular is very lucrative. Now, for me in particular, I would say that I'm looking for it for the purposes of finishing off my last slot for faction guardians. That'd be huge for competitive purposes, as well as just another thing that I would like to say I'm done with, you know? Now, with that being said, I want to break this down for everybody before we do our polls. I don't know if you can see at the top of the screen right now. We have enough to do a couple polls. I will do that at the end of this, but I wanted to talk to you guys about whether or not this is valuable for an early, mid, late, and end game player. Now, let's break it down. Early game. When you're starting off, you don't really have access to a lot of champions, right? So anything is almost viable as an upgrade or a contribution towards your progression. So I think the obvious answer is yes, and especially if you hit like yellows or anything along the lines of higher than epics, and you're good. You know, it's obviously going to do better for you, right? But in particular for this faction, there's some key champions that I think that could be very strong in terms of like carry potential, as well as long-term value for like late game, end game players. So obviously, my answer automatically for an early game progressing account would be yes, right? You know, Taragi could be great for a synergistic ally protection team, maybe the starting precursor to like keeping your team alive for clan boss to start getting like top rewards for like Ultra Nightmare and whatnot. Then again, he also has a provoke, which could be valuable for certain key areas, like, for example, Spider. Maybe that's one form of control you want to do for the Spiderlings, or maybe provoking as a part of maybe your starting precursor to our Hydra team. A lot of value that can be given across the board, right? The same thing with Burengiri being a viable alternative with strength and shields, an AoE stun for control, an A1 provoke, not too bad. He also has some pretty niche areas where, like, I think it's Bommel that he may be pretty good as an option to kind of help solo kill the bosses in earlier stages. Not too bad, right? I'm a big fan of Hatatsu, who gives increased defense and continuous heals, which is very valuable on a 3-turn cooldown. So it's very easy to spam. AoE decreased attack, as well as a A1 leech. He's a bit of a reader, but the ship is pretty solid in terms of like his viability. I have one built up and I do not regret it, to be honest with you. Now, some of the other champions are a little bit more lackluster on the epic side, but I would say those are some pretty good starting champions to maybe get the ball going. Wuji could be a great answer for like the precursor to a starter block buff champion across the board for Hydra, for example. There are some good options, right? But of course, we always want to get more excited about the legendaries. And that's where it gets a little bit more nuanced, I would say, and it varies based off of your needs and wants in the game. So for me, I'm going to break down each of the legendaries, and I want to kind of give you guys an idea of some areas that they're pretty good in, or if they're just pretty much kind of fodder, viable for feeding to another champion, maybe as an option, okay? So Tatsu, excuse me. Actually, believe it or not, I found a spot that I felt like she was really, really good in, and that is the speed teams for Sandep. I actually have done some videos for like a sleep options, and Tatsu was one of them with the decreased res and sleep, giving you a chance to be able to set up your speed teams to kind of get in, go ham, go home, right? But you need to start off with that sleep so that you can get CC or speed tune it up however you see fit. And take a look at that video and it'll give you a little bit of an idea what you can do with it. So there is a good viable option for her there. Decreased res is a really unique debuff that I could see maybe being valuable in one area like, let's see, Chimera. There's trials that are valuable for it, as well as increase attack and crit damage, which also has the ability to remove all debuffs. Like her kit's not bad, believe it or not. Now, is she completely viable? I don't know if that's what I would say in other areas of the game. I think for the most part, that's kind of where I lean at. But it is a very cool way to try to like control things. You could also use her as like your sleep agent on all enemies. You know, like maybe that's a form of CC that you want to rely on. And that could be very valuable for you. So not a bad champion. And then of course the obvious nod that she is a legendary that you use for the fusion of Mikage. I will say I would caution that most players would probably want to fuse up the champion first if you can find the way to save up for the epics to work your way up, because that's valuable points you can use in either champion chase events or CVC, for example, as well as an opportunity to get the legendary for free that way, you know. And then you could save this one as your only option for whatever you want to do miscellaneously. Now, someone who is, I would say, not necessarily power creep, but still holds a little bit of relevance in today's meta is Haruma. She's one of the best defensive nukers in the game, I still think, to this day. A scaling A2, which increases her defense up, which is what she scales off of over the course of time with per hit with this A2. Great for Hydra. She's a provoker, which is also great for Hydra. She's got an A1 that can spread across the board. Great for Hydra. I think she's a great champion all through, thick and through. PvP, Hydra focus, maybe as a general just nuker breaking down waves with her A3, or if she kills somebody with her A2, it procs the A3. Very great. But the power that she has is basically in her passive. The ignore defense effects that are very prominent in today's meta are basically cut in half. As well as she has a great affinity matchup against Demon Spawn faction champions. So some of your Carnages or some of those other champions that you might see kind of sneak their way through, the Cheshire that might be a little sneaky. This is less of a problem because you have Haruma in play. Now, with that being said, I think she's probably one of the ones I really would like to get my hands on a duplicate of. I would not be sad about it if I got an extra one of her. To Gintoro. Now, he has seen better days. I think he's still viable for clan boss content and maybe some miscellaneous content here and there where single target turn meter control is very valuable. I want you to think Dark Fae, for example, or setup champion for decreased defense and weaken, and of course a single target burst nuker. He is great for those options. As time has gone by, I would say that most progressed accounts start seeing better value in other champions that could do that, but also across the board with big, wide AoE content-centric kind of approaches. But nevertheless, he's a very stronger single-target nuker. Maybe good for some boss content for someone, somewhat as an option. But nevertheless, I would say he is a great option to have for earlier to mid-game accounts to kind of get the ball going. Over the course of time, though, I could see him being power crept. Another champion that has a special place in my heart, I think he's the coolest looking champion in the game, amongst some others, is our Mishinaki. He has one of the best kits in the game, very versatile, very encompassing, and this is where to kind of shed some light, the difference of what I was talking about with Gintoro. Mishinaki's great. HP burn on an A1, decreased defense, which will also put a decreased attack if you have Hex in play. Then you have your AoE Hex on top of that, which also strips enemies' buffs. And then, on top of that, too, he has the chance to join on an ally that hits a Hex target with his passive. A very formidable champion that's defensive-oriented, great in Hydra, great in Spider, great almost everywhere, for the lack of better words, because of the fact that his stuff is AoE-centric and it's all-encompassing. So, very solid champion across the board, and I think he is a great staple to have. Another one that I would not mind having a duplicate of. Besides Gintoro, all of the top rows so far, I have at least one copy of, which would help me towards my Faction Guardians. Now, with that being said, I think I also have the similar case with Lady Kimmy. Lady Kimmy is great as a lot of options. She is great for a setup champion, a booster, / turn meter decrease, I believe, as well. Block buffs, which if you are able to strip all enemies or anyone that has buffs that get removed, she puts block buffs on. Not ideal in terms of Hydra, but the other side of her kit is very valuable. Complementary is what I would say. You lean more towards the value of increased speed and accuracy in the turn meter boosting, and the decreased accuracy and decreased speed, and maybe some turn meter reduction, which you have to be careful with in today's meta, especially against Marius. But a great champion to maybe set up for like maybe your bomb champions that you want to have a lot of accuracy so they can bomb the enemy, go ham, go home, and you don't have to worry about resistance. Now, in Doom Tower, her ore is very valuable. I think this is probably the one thing I would suggest that if Plarium is ever listening to little old me, consider changing this to all areas, or maybe even particular arena, and that would give her a lot more shine in terms of as a valuable option. She'd actually be a meta pick, I would feel like. Yeah, I would say she could see herself as a viable option, considering that her turn meter boost, increased speed, increased accuracy is pretty valuable. Now, with that being said, where would you want to use her? Obviously, there's Hydra, there's PvP. I would say, let's see where else we could see her being valuable in. Decreased accuracy, decreased speed are also very valuable debuffs that could be valuable for Iron Twins, maybe, as an option. I would say that's a low prio, but still, nevertheless, something kind of interesting. Sin City, obviously, in Faction Wars, especially with hard mode coming out, she could be a great staple for you to have. Let's see, we got Arashi. He's one of the more newer ones, and I won't lie, I haven't heard a lot about him. I heard that his kit screens to have like a lot of potential for Arena, but the multipliers kind of hold him back a bit for being able to really shine in today's meta. And I feel like that still kind of holds up somewhat true. Maybe you guys that have had an Arashi, has some experience with him, can maybe give better value or better input towards it. But, you know, every hit has a chance of stealing a buff. This effect cannot be resisted if he's under Veil, which is very valuable. He has a chance to ignore 20% of somebody's target's defense, as well as shield and strength buffs. Will also ignore Stone Skin if he has Veil or Perfect Veil. And then he also increases the duration of all buffs on this champion by 1 turn. And then, of course, before he attacks all enemies, he has a Perfect Veil and increased crit damage buff placed on himself. And then, of course, this attack deals single target damage, so it's an AoE, but not necessarily. It hits all enemies, but it's considered single target damage for each enemy hit. And then, of course, it also has some ignore percent scaling, and then it will ignore more. Each subsequent hit ignores up to 35%. So I don't think this is a bad option. It's a really interesting mechanic. He has a really cool passive, being able to place Perfect Veil on himself at the beginning of the round. And then, of course, if the reflected damage kills an enemy, which is a part of his passive, he also places a Veil on himself. Arena Speed Aura with 28% screams to be very good. Like I said, it seems like his kit screams to be very PvP oriented, but for some reason it seems like his kit is still a little lackluster in terms of damage, which is what his main focus is. So very curious to see y'all's thoughts on whether or not Arashi slams or not. I also think that he's Spirit Affinity, and today's meta is pretty magic dominant, with some minor exceptions for Force champions, but nevertheless very magic dominant. And I feel like, with the exception of like maybe Carnage as a Spirit option, you don't see really too many Spirit champions in play. So maybe that could be food for thought we can consider. I think his aesthetic is pretty. Honestly, it's very simple, but I love the whole ninja vibe that we get from it. It's really cool. So, W either way, you know? He is one champion that I do not have a copy of, so if I get him, he would be unique. And then, of course, Garan, who's going to be our next one that we're going to talk about. I believe he's a fusible champion towards, like an empowerment champion. I'm not entirely sure here. We're going to double check. I don't know for sure, but I believe he is. Maybe I'm wrong. Let's see. Doesn't look like it. Maybe I overthought that one. Maybe I'm thinking of another champion. That might be why. I'm thinking of maybe Nobel as like a champion for it. I don't see it. Maybe if you guys see it, I missed it. You let me know in the comments too as well. But I don't see any alternatives for him. So he's just straight up a champ that you can obtain if you want to. I know that they buffed him recently in the not too distant past, but I don't necessarily feel like there's any spot that makes him still stand out. Stealing all buffs from the target, from each enemy is pretty interesting, as well as putting a buff spread and applying that to your allies is pretty cool. Being able to place a block revive, and then attacking all enemies can be pretty cool. But I feel like a lot of the conversation we have is that his kit screens to be very support oriented. So a lot of the stuff that he would necessarily need to do is kind of lackluster, and that's kind of where I feel like that may be where we missed the mark at with this particular champion. Now, I'm not going to go too far into Garan. I don't feel like he is really too much worth building out of, in my opinion. Maybe there's some small value here and there with buff stealing and block reviving, but it seems they have to miss the mark. Kiyaku, on the other hand, is kind of like your upgraded Seeker with her passive. Being able to give increased defense, but also healing all allies by 50% of their max HP is pretty cool. Giving yourself ally protection and block damage, as well as an extra turn, followed up with the ability to apply a AoE decrease attack, and if it fails, it places an HP burn instead. And of course, a single target A1, which allows you to hit weaken. Now, it being a triple hitter is pretty cool. You could use that for maybe Fire Knight as an A1 option. You know, multi-hits are pretty good there. Being able to use her in a go second style strategy for PvP. It's unorthodox. It's not normally what I would recommend long term, but I think it's a very valuable approach for early progressing accounts. And then, of course, obviously, because she has block damage and ally protection, that could be a good survival tactic for keeping yourself going during clan boss. So early game accounts could really value from that. Late game, end game, she's not really seen as a viable option. I think she's really cool looking regardless, though. I do use her in one particular stage. I think we actually did it this rotation in Sin City. Correct me if I'm wrong. Oh, not that stage. Let's see if I can find it. It's not that stage either. I'm also looking at normal. Let's see if we can find hard real quick. Is it S10? No, I thought it was S12. It is S12. There it is. Yeah, I use her as a basically as my bolster champion, and she's kind of there just to kind of keep the team going for the most part. But realistically, with my Morax and my GNFG, kind of just brute force it, so it's not too much of an issue there. And that pretty much rounds out most of the standard legendary options you can get. Of course, the headliner, Tetssuya, I've seen him. He has some pretty cool damage potential. I think his speed cycling that he can get with Faction Unity Champions is underrated. Now, I won't say that a full faction Shadowkin team is viable in general PvP, but for Siege content, I could see that being very, very cool. Turn meter, steal turn meter, damage, ignore percent. I mean, like, he's got it all across the board. Increase ally speed by 19%. Great as an org champion for speed champions. You see the speed kind of kicking in. And, of course, increase ally crit rate in all battles by 50%. Applying only to Shadowkins makes him a very, very cool option. 101 base speed, too, not too bad. Multipliers, pretty solid, too, from what I remember seeing / hearing. I could see this champion being very valuable as time goes by, as a option in Siege in particular. I don't know if I would use him long term, but regardless, I think it's a really, really cool champion. Now, with all that being said, I've done enough yapping. Do I think you should pull for this this particular Prism event? I think early games, yes. Mid games, sort of yes. Late games, it depends. And then, of course, in-game players, you would only want to do it for purposes that, like how I'm doing it, which is I'm aiming for Legendary, for Faction Guardian purposes, and if I get some key, unique champions along the way, great. You know, either way, I'm blessed to be able to pull some shards regardless. So I want to thank all you guys that have been supporting me. No matter what, I'm a winner, and that's the way I'm going to look at this particular set of pulls. Hopefully, we get... Now, what do I want in particular? I think from the very best option, I would like a Harima duplicate or a Miscellaneous duplicate would be pretty cool. In terms of secondary or alternative duplicates I can get, I believe Tatsu is one that I have, Kimi is one that I have, and then Gamarun is one that I have. Then the others I already have duplicates of. And then, of course, Arashi and Tetssuya would be brand spanking new. So, let me double check and just make sure one more time that I said that all accurately. Let's take a look at our legendaries in the Shadowkin department. Where are we at? Where are we at? Where are we at? It is right there. All right, let's take a look. We have... let's see. I got one Gamarun, no extra Gamarons. I got two Gentoros. I have one Kimi, so I was accurate on the Kimi. One Tatsu, also accurate there. One Mishinaki and one Harma. So definitely want those as an options. And with that being said, we're going to pull the single and then we're going to pull the 10 pull and see what we get. Now, I hope you guys are with me on this. If you've enjoyed this, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and join us whenever we live stream on Tuesdays through Fridays. We start at 1 p.m. Eastern time, so definitely check that out. And with that being said, let's get it. Praise! Come on, baby. Give me a banger. I want a banger. It would be cool to get like the legendary I'm looking for. At least, I like at least a dupe, preferably. And then from there, Tetssuya I'd be happy with. So, come on, baby. Here's the 10 pop for the video. Let's see. We're getting a purple. A purple. No. A purple. Come on, give me a yellow praise. Come on, baby. A lot of purple so far. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. At least one yellow. Do me a favor, player. Just one yellow. Come on, baby. No! Unfortunate. I wasn't able to get a yellow. Well, that's how it is sometimes. Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't. And I guess that'll do it for us for now. I guess that's pretty much gonna round it out. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys haven't already considered giving your thoughts on what you think about this particular Prism event, feel free to share. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. And then, as always, always remember, stay ascended.